This is the Stanley Cup winning Florida Panthers, and since day one of the 23-24 season, they were a problem. They could hit, score, defend, and they had a goalie that could steal games. But at the heart of their team and their identity was this man, Aleksander Barkov. The two-time Selke winner has been constantly deemed the most underrated superstar in the NHL for years. But after leading his team to back-to-back Cup finals and becoming the first Finnish-born captain in NHL history to win a Stanley Cup, the Aleksander Barkov effect is real, and it has become a problem for the rest of the NHL. Before we break down the brilliance of Aleksander Barkov, I want to thank Opera for making this video possible. With how many clips, storylines, and stats that I'm sifting through every day, organization is my top priority, and I've loved how Opera has used their tab emojis and island feature to make things way easier. Little sneak peek behind the scenes here, but I got my own little madness set up here to stay organized. I usually have all the hot topics under the fire emoji, all the missed calls and controversial storylines go under the crying emoji. That way we account for every fan's tears. And finally, I keep all the individual and team breakdowns under the hockey emoji to keep things organized. The tab island feature also keeps me from putting my head through a wall like other browsers. I mean, just look at this. Opera assigns a tab with a color so that I can group all the tabs under the assigned topic and then collapse it all to keep everything nice and organized. Is my OCD showing right now? Absolutely. But you're looking at a guy who likes to break down hockey systems in his spare time, so give me a break. In all seriousness, huge shout out to Opera for making the behind the scenes a lot easier for these videos. You can download the latest version with both the tab emojis and islands in the description down below and start browsing with Opera. If you ask the casual hockey fan or just the average viewer, most people know the superstars like McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby, Matthews, but a player like Barkov can only be truly appreciated by looking beyond the stats or flash. Barkov is a 6'3", 215-pound center who dominates the middle of the ice pretty much every shift. And while that might seem obvious given his position, Barkov is the best two-way player in the NHL. Looking at his statistics from this past season, he put up a solid 80 points in 73 games while following it up with a cup run that saw him score 22 points in 24 games. The two-time Selke winner doesn't really have numbers that jump out at you. He's never eclipsed the 100-point mark, but that doesn't mean that he isn't one of the most dominant players in the game. In order to win in the NHL, you need a team that plays quote-unquote the right way. Barkov is the premier example of this and Florida's anchor of how they want to play. Florida is a team that won the cup by getting in your face, establishing a forecheck, and leveraging their defensemen along the walls to sustain pressure and maintain their cycle. When Barkov is on the ice, he gives Florida an advantage in pretty much every situation. As the center, your main focus is to usually stay above the dots and monitor the middle of the ice. This is the area where Barkov controls the game. From this area, Barkov can pop into space to provide support for a winger, he can attack into a board battle, or he can sit back and anticipate a play to cause a turnover. Barkov isn't typically the trigger man, as he only scored 23 goals this season, but he's still amazing at popping into the space in the middle for a dangerous chance. And although this initial shot is blocked, watch how he continuously stays in the blind spot of the defenders while providing his teammate for support. Reinhart makes a fantastic pass, and Barkov's spacing has him in the right spot for a goal. And although Barkov certainly has the IQ to be a triggerman, his specialty lies in his ability to extend plays as support. This is a play here that became a staple of Florida's offense, and it usually relies on the consistency of Barkov's positioning. As the D pinches in, Barkov heads to the point to provide support. Even though the puck gets by the initial pressure of the Florida D-man, Barkov is there to not only hold the zone, but to make an incredible heads-up pass that gives Florida a dangerous chance. His highlight reel goal in Game 6 came off of this exact read. Florida's D gets aggressive, Barkov is there for support, and because he takes this route and doesn't cheat for offense, he's able to quickly adjust and dive in with speed on the turnover. Once he gets the puck, the skill takes over, and we have ourselves another highlight reel goal. Florida's system relies on all their defensemen to have zero hesitation when making this type of decision. So when you have a player like Barkov who's always on the right side of the puck during these decisions, it makes everyone wearing a Florida uniform that much better. However, what makes a player like Barkov so great is his versatility in essentially all offensive situations. Even as the F1, when his role is to separate the player from the puck, he uses his frame and his stick to surprise defenders. With his size and speed, Barkov packages it all together on this play here as he keeps the Rangers hemmed in their end as the sole forechecker. First, Barkov uses his speed to close off the angle, and once this puck is reversed, he instantly drives through his check to maintain a direct path to the puck carrier. From this point, he uses the range of his stick to make the puck carrier believe he's got very little time to make a play. He forces it up the boards, and again, it's another grade A chance for Florida because of Barkov's intelligence. On this Stanley Cup run, Barkov led the NHL in takeaways and actually set a record since the stat was tracked with 34 in a single postseason. Barkov is able to manage the game so efficiently because of the decisions he makes in the middle of the ice. In these positions as a center or an offensive-minded forward, it's easy and even tempting to cheat just a tiny bit to give yourself a better look if the puck gets through. Even the very best players in the world are guilty of it at times, as it's a part of what makes them so special offensively. McDavid and other high-end offensive superstars are able to score 100-plus points a year because they have a unique sixth sense when it comes to sniffing out an offensive chance. However, sometimes it can backfire, as this is an example here of a play that is usually cut off by this defender and the loose puck is heading up the ice. With McDavid's speed and anticipation, this read sets him up to do a ton of damage offensively. But sometimes a slight misread or a funny bounce can end up in the back of your net. That's not to say this doesn't happen to Barkov either, but it's very rare that you catch Barkov cheating on the defensive side of the puck to try and create extra offense. His offense frequently comes directly from his defensive stops. And one of the primary ways Barkov generates a lot of his takeaways and breakups is by knowing when and how to double team players in the defensive zone. Florida plays a variation of zone coverage and man-on-man, so when Florida's defense forces a puck carrier along the wall or even makes them turn their back to the play, Barkov is great at attacking the puck carrier when he's the most vulnerable and making it a mini 2-on-1 to create a breakup. Now, the best defensive players create a false sense of space for puck carriers, and Barkov is a master at this skill. In the Stanley Cup final, Edmonton was a team that used a variety of scissor routes on the perimeter to confuse man-on-man coverages that Florida likes to deploy. Knowing this, watch how Barkov anticipates this drop and disrupts the play. Barkov's man initially on this play is Evan Bouchard, but as McDavid and him crisscross, Barkov throws a tiny wrinkle by temporarily showing that he's going to double team McDavid with Forsling. But what this really is a decoy by Barkov to get McDavid to believe that Bouchard will have some open space when he drops this puck. You'll notice that because Forsling doesn't switch assignments with Barkov. His body and head stay locked onto McDavid the entire time. Once McDavid flips this to Bouchard, Barkov instantly attacks Bouchard, who's caught completely off guard with how quickly he closed in on him. From defense all the way to offense, it's a complete play that ends up in a goal for Florida. When you see how Barkov sets these mini defensive traps, it reminds me a lot of Pavel Datsyuk. People will also draw comparisons to Patrice Bergeron, but maybe it's the fact that both Datsyuk and Barkov are left-handed shots that just allows the comparison to feel right to me. Datsyuk had arguably the best defensive stick the league had ever seen. The way he could pickpocket pucks and set similar traps for puck carriers had him making defenders looking constantly like fools. But even on a fundamental level of controlling the middle of the ice, Datsyuk and Barkov have the same unique ability of lurking as the high F3 and picking off a pass for a quick turnover. Even when you look at how both players can steal pucks with a quick stick lift or a subtle poke, you can see the similarities in their game. They both have these subtle, creative, and skillful plays that usually go unnoticed for how important they are in a 60-minute hockey game. For being such a big player, Barkov's agility and raw speed is so deceptive and dangerous off the rush. On the attack, Barkov likes to create using a few options. Option A is he attacks the middle, dishes to his wing prior to the entry, and then drives the middle for the puck carrier to either use him as a give and go or to attack the space that he created in the middle. Option B usually sees him use his speed advantage that he's created in his own end to slice through defenders and take a shot on goal. Both options tend to alarm defenders because they don't expect the speed that Barkov can generate. Again, we see this firsthand against McDavid in the Cup final. As Florida looks to break out, McDavid reads that his F1 may be able to cause a turnover. Now, the safe option is to stay above his check in Barkov and take this route to negate a clean breakout. But McDavid's offensive instinct tells him to be a bit more aggressive. Unfortunately, the F1 of the Oilers doesn't slow down the breakout, and with one pass, Barkov is off to the races. Even with McDavid busting back at full speed, he just can't keep up with Barkov, who opts to go with option A in this rush attack by kicking it out to Reinhart. A quick little give and go mixed with a gorgeous pass ends up in another goal for Florida. It's the culmination of all these subtle little plays by Barkov in a full hockey game that makes him and the Florida Panthers so hard to play against. In so many ways, Barkov can control the entire complexion of a hockey game. In an era where offensive players are putting up crazy individual numbers, Barkov is capable of shutting down even the most deadly offensive threats while being one himself. To be the greatest two-way player in the current NHL isn't always flashy. But then again, who cares if you're the last one standing at the end of the season?